up out of the roof. He'd come down, and then he...
Wait. You're going too fast for my peanut brain. A fire would go through a roof?
Yes.
Explain what you mean.
Okay, a fire would come up out of the roof, and a fire about... You go up about 50 feet, and a fire about 50 feet away from it, from the sky, would come down and mingle with it.
Could people see this fire?
Oh, yes. Matter of fact, they got many calls to the fire department.
Really?
Not from people in the meeting, but from people outside that would see it.
This was the fire of God's glory.
Yes. Now, it wouldn't consume. You didn't smell any fire. But that's when the greatest miracles would happen. And he would, he got up, was telling them, and Brother David Garcia was there, and he said, he's the one that told me about it, that it was the most...
Let me explain this. Tommy was a young runaway, and one of the women that was involved in the Azusa Street revival took him in and took care of him. And most of these people were children. And Tommy was a young man, and they were elderly, and they told him the stories of firsthand what they saw over and over again, that he can tell the stories better than them. So again, what did they tell you?
Well, Brother Seymour said, you want to have some fun like we did about a year ago when the man's leg grew out. He says, we're going to pray for this man's arm. And the man's arm had been ripped out on a job related in a big machine, and it ripped out even the shoulder.
So did they, in other words, so he did not have the limb at all?
He didn't have the shoulder, the arm, or nothing. And when he prayed for him, Brother Garcia said, Brother Tommy, I was standing very close where I could look right down into that socket and see the bone. And he said, when Seymour prayed for him, he said he just kind of stood there a while with his hands on his head smiling. He said all of a sudden that bone started growing out, and right behind it would come this flesh going around the bone. And he said probably took about 2 seconds, but to him it was in slow motion. And that man's arm just grew out, and he said within a few minutes even the fingernails grew back on his fingers.
That, if someone were to see that with their very eyes, it would transform their life forever.
Well, of course. Even them telling about me, I got to where it was like I was there, and it transformed my life.
Speaking of transforming lives, your book, They Told Me Their Stories. I'm told when people like, I have a friend that's an evangelist, when he reads out loud in front of a meeting, your book, he just reads the stories, the faith comes, and miracles start happening. And your foreword here is by Billy Brim. She's a friend of mine. What happens when she reads this out loud?
Oh my, she has the same thing, and she's had visitations of the Shekinah glory, and that Shekinah means you can see it. Everybody can see it.
Now, William Seymour prophesied about the next revival that will come. Tell me about that.
He prophesied that in about 100 years, he did this in 1909, there would be a...
So about 100 years would be 2009.
Yes. That would be but it could be before or after.
Okay.
He said another revival, like unto Azusa Street, only greater, would come again, and then only this time, it wouldn't be in one place, it would be all over the world.
Guess what? That's happening right now. Don't go away. It was so much fun. Listen, how would you have liked to have been alive 100 years ago when what was called the Azusa Street Revival broke out? More major creative miracles. I mean, most teeth materializing. It's just body parts materializing. And I have this book called They Told Me Their Stories, because you see, Tommy was a young man, and he met some of the people that were in the Azusa Street Revival, and they told him their stories. And as he reads or even tells these stories, outrageous things happen. You were in Yukon, Oklahoma, and you started telling the stories in this book, and what happened?
Well, soon after I had told the stories, Brother David Rhodes and his wife Sharon, a few weeks after I was there, a spot in the middle of the platform, a smoky, fiery kind of substance started coming up, and he checked to make sure that that it wasn't the young people setting the steamer off. or if it wasn't a broken air conditioner, and it wasn't, and he turned around and said, how many of you see this stuff? And they all raised their hands. And as it began to grow, it even grew over to where the young people were. It filled the whole church.
What was the stuff?
It was Shekinah glory. It was a smoky-looking kind of, one woman said, kind of an orangey color. And it went on over to the young people. They all fell out in the spirit in hysterical laughter. They just couldn't stop laughing. And then 4 brand new converts came up to Brother David and says, Brother David, you got to understand, they'd only had the baptism a few weeks. We figured out what this stuff is. And he kind of laughed. He says, what is this? And they says, it's God's laughing gas.
Huh. But when you spoke, the glory, the Shekinah glory of God came in that church in Yukon?
Yes.
But this is normal. This is the atmosphere of heaven. This
Absolutely.
is what should also always happen. Tell me about the person that had the 4 fingers restored.
Oh yes, that was the Langfords. You would have fallen in love with Sister Langford, and you would have tolerated. He was very blunt spoken, but he got the evidence done. They had this man come in, and at a job, his fingers had been cut off. Okay. And so Brother Langford grabbed his hand, and of course he told the man, he says, God is not healing. He says, let's let it grow back. And the man says, what? He says, God will grow them back. And so with the man's permission, he got his arm and stuck it up in the air, started praying, and Sister Langford was helping him hold that arm up. And then the fingers started growing out, and before they got fully growing out, Sister Langford, she hit the ground. She passed out from seeing such a miracle. And Brother Langford started going around the church, the mission, screaming, look at this. This man's, hey, his fingers wasn't there, and God grew them back. Look at this, look at this. And he's screaming this. Of course, they had a big shouting service.
Tell me about that woman that had difficulty walking to a meeting, that was dying.
Yes, that was Sister Laura Lanktroff. The lady was about 50, 55 years old, and so she came to the meeting. She had lung cancer. She weighed about 65 pounds. She's about 5'6".
She had difficulty, I understand, even getting to the meeting.
She had this staff she would stick it in front of her and then scoot up little bitty baby steps up to the staff and stick the staff out in front of her. She had 2 miles, and it took her 3 hours to get there.
Do you know what I found? When people sacrifice to come to a meeting where there are miracles, they usually get their miracle.
Absolutely.
There's something that I think God honors their hunger.
Absolutely. I believe that same thing. Because that woman, she met Laura Lanktroff, and she looked at her and says, this is the woman I want to pray for me. So Sister Laura prayed for her, and the pain left her, but during the 3 more hours that she was there, the woman gained 40 pounds.
Instantly? In 3 hours?
In 3 hours, she gained 40 pounds.
Now, I don't want you to pray that for me.
Just pray some of that off for me. But she went back to her doctor the next day. Now, she knew exactly how much she weighed. She weighed before she started down there, and she weighed when she got back home. And her doctor didn't know her. Her doctor's name was Thomas Wyatt, which later on founded the ministry called Wings of Healing. Okay, they were making her fill out a new clients forms because they didn't recognize her and wouldn't believe her.
Was she totally healed?
Yes, completely. They checked her out, and she says, your insides are like new, inside and out. Your lungs are like brand new lungs. And he says, that's impossible. She says, I know, but to my God, nothing's impossible. And his only remark was, you're going down to that old warehouse, aren't you? And she was, and enough of his people started coming to him, totally healed, that he went down there, and he became a Christian, and within months, he gave up the medical practice.
And he started a ministry
called Wings of Healing. He had miracles galore all over the world.
Did you hear that? A medical doctor had miracles galore all